How's everybody doing this morning? You good? That was very energetic, Oxford. That was great. Are you all ready for a fun mental health assembly? Yeah. That's so much better. That's great. I got to tour your school yesterday and see all your projects. That miniature golf thing's really cool. I heard you have some really good sports teams. Who has the best team, though? Who's the best team at Oxford? All right, I'll let you battle that one out. I don't usually share this story, but I played basketball when I was in high school, and I graduated the same year as Kobe Bryant, and we went to high school near each other, and so I got to watch Kobe play a lot. I can't say that I played with Kobe, because nobody really played with Kobe when he was in high school. He kind of just did whatever he wanted, and you just stood there, and you're like, okay, all right, Kobe, I see you. So it's good to be on a basketball court today. I haven't been on one in a little bit. We're going to talk about a lot of things today. The first thing I want to talk to you about, though, is the Peace Corps. She mentioned it in the introduction. The Peace Corps is a program where you get to go volunteer in another country for 2 years. You live there, you work there, you become a part of the community. Have any of you in this room ever thought about living in another country, learning a different language, volunteering, giving back in any way? All right. So as you heard in my introduction, I served in Botswana. Americans are terrible with maps, like the absolute worst with geography. So like I used to just put up a picture of Botswana and people would be like, where is that? And then I'd use a map of like Southern Africa and people would be like, oh, that's in India? And then I was like, no, so now I use a map of the entire continent of Africa with a large arrow pointing to Botswana to help my American friends. I worked at the largest center for people with disabilities in the country. So the students you see in this picture have different disabilities. Some of them are deaf, some of them have physical disabilities, some have intellectual disabilities. In their villages, they are treated in unimaginable ways. They could be locked in a closet for months at a time. They could be physically abused, sexually abused, abandoned by their families. The center was created to give them different skills so that when they go back to their villages, they can find a job, they can find employment, they can be involved, and they can stop being isolated. If you've ever thought about volunteering in another country and giving back in a different way, the Peace Corps is a really great option. You do have to do it for 2 years and 3 months, but you get to do really great projects. I created sports programs for kids with disabilities, created projects for women's empowerment, and you do get to be a part of the community. This is me in a wedding where I had to learn 6 choreographed African step dances and dance with a partner in what was just like 6-inch loose dirt. I'm going to do one of the dances now. I'm not going to do one of the dances now. That's a much different presentation. But as you heard in my introduction, I also learned how to track lions. This is me driving a truck, and there's the lions. They're just back there. So that's the Peace Corps. If you've ever thought about doing it, if you've ever thought about volunteering abroad, you should definitely check it out. I'm not here this morning to talk to you about the Peace Corps. I'm actually here this morning to talk to you about mental health. And the biggest challenge I have whenever I stand up in front of any audience or a gym full of students is that when I say the words mental health, all of you think different things. So like if you Google image mental health, this is what comes up, right? So if you have celebrity breakdowns, you have school shootings, you have people looking angry, sad, lonely, scared. The biggest problem with all these images is that none of you in this room look at these images and then think like, oh yeah, I want to have mental health. I want to be like everybody I see on this screen. And so the biggest challenge I face is that as soon as I say the words mental health, most of you immediately think of having a problem. You think of having depression or schizophrenia or bipolar disorder or suicidal thoughts. But mental health isn't having a problem. Mental health is how all of you in this room address the different challenges in your lives. So mental health is how you deal with stress. It's how you deal with lack of sleep. Does anybody know anything about lack of sleep? Some of you. All right. It's how you deal with dating and your future and your finances. It's how you deal with your friends and your family and school. When I say the words mental health today, I don't want you to think like, oh, that's not for me, I'm good. Mental health is for everybody in this room. It's as important as your physical health. So like when I want to work on my physical health, what do? Well, I do CrossFit, I run triathlons, I take care of what I eat, I take care of my body. If you want to work on your mental health, you have to think about how you communicate, how you cope, what your relationships are like, and how you take care of your mind. And so a lot of you look at me and you think like, okay, but why is this guy the spokesperson for mental health? Very few people, when they first see me, look at me and they're like, oh, this dude, he has a severe mental illness. He probably dropped out of school, had a substance abuse issue, like what a weirdo. Very few people think that when they see me. But one of the things I'm going to share with you today is my personal story. And I have a very intense personal story with bipolar disorder. I was diagnosed when I was 16. When I was 17, I was hospitalized for attempting to take my own life. I graduated high school. I went to college. 2 months into my freshman year, I had to leave college because I relapsed with bipolar disorder. And then I was in and out of hospitals and hospitals and colleges for the next 4 years before I found a way to manage it and start working on it. Now, I don't share my personal story to scare you. I would never want any of you to leave this room and be like, man, that guy's life sucked. Guess I'll go eat lunch. Like, that's not why we're here. If that's what you take from this, I'm sorry. I share my story to get you to think about the decisions and the choices that you're making in your lives. But I do want to be honest with you from the start of this, that I don't know what it's like to be you. I don't know what it's like to go through half the things you go through. I don't know what it's like to live your life. This is an issue that does affect everybody of every race, of every gender, of every ethnicity, but I'm not going to stand up here and say I know what it's like to be you, because I don't. But I do know what it's like to go through a lot of trauma, a lot of pain, and come back out on top. And so what we're going to talk about today is I'm going to give you an overview of mental health issues that are happening in today's society. I'm going to talk to you about my personal story. Then I'm going to talk to you about some coping skills. And then you all can come out and ask some questions. Sound good? All right. So let's start with some statistics. The statistics around this issue are pretty overwhelming. So 1 out of every 5 high school and middle school students in this country experiences a diagnosable mental health disorder each year. Suicide is the second leading cause of death in high schools. 76% of students report feeling overwhelmed. 11% report getting a good night's sleep. I think that goes hand in hand. I could go on with statistics for a while, but here's what I've become sick of. I feel like since you've been in middle school, people have done an effective job of telling you what's wrong with you, but nobody tells you what you can do about it. So since you've been in middle school, you've heard you have depression, you have anxiety, you don't sleep, you're stressed out, you could be bullied, you could take your own life, but nobody tells you what to do about it. Sometimes if you're lucky, you'll see a PSA where a celebrity will come out and be like, hey, you're all messed up. I was messed up too. Talk to someone, and then they disappear. That's not working. It's time to start giving you some tools. It's time to start helping you treat your mental health like you treat your physical health. Because we teach physical health from kindergarten through the rest of your lives. But we only talk about mental health when there's a problem or something's wrong, and it's not working. So today I want to give you those tools to change that. But the statistic that's most relevant to me, and the reason I started speaking, is that 66% of high school students don't seek help for their mental health. They don't talk to a friend, a family member, a counselor, anyone. So I always like to begin my presentation with this question: why? Why is it that all of you in this room know someone who's experiencing some kind of mental health issue, but we still don't talk about it? So I was hoping some of you could raise your hands, be loud, be patient, and answer this question. Why don't we talk about mental health? If I'm not seeing a hand, let me know. Yes? You don't want to seem weak. Yeah, you should suck it up, deal with it on your own. Why are you crying? I certainly felt that in high school. Yeah, what else? What are some other reasons we don't talk about this issue? Yes? People judge you. They may call you names. They may stop being your friend. They may do different things. Yeah. You don't think people care? Yeah. That's a really big thing. Anything else? This is such a big room. Yeah, go ahead. I'll go blue shirt first. Yeah, talking about it makes it real. You can only hide it for so long. Once you say it, it's real. Yeah, what else? It's heavily stigmatized. Yeah, that goes back to the judgment piece. Anything else? They don't know anything about it? Yeah. There's no education on it? Anybody else? That's all you got, Oxbridge. Yes. Go ahead. It's difficult to talk about. Yeah, for sure. Does anybody in this audience have an issue with trust? Did anybody go through a situation where you one time told somebody, yo, I went through this. Don't tell anyone else. And then they told everyone else. And then you found out and you were like, yo, I'm not ever going to talk about this again, right? Yeah, that happens. Okay, so here's the thing. You have just listed a bunch of reasons of why we don't talk about this. Step A in addressing mental health is to start with these reasons. So like I had access to the best treatment in the world for my mental health, and I didn't even try to work on it. Why? Because I felt stupid. I felt embarrassed. I felt ashamed. I felt weak. I thought I should just suck it up and get through it on my own, and that's what I tried to do. It didn't work. But I wasn't able to get help until I addressed these reasons. So like if you ever want to change this issue with your friends, your family, anybody, you have to start here. You have to start by asking, why don't we talk about this, and then break that down. But when I talk to students, I find that most people don't even have a vocabulary for their mental health. So like if I ask you how's your physical health, you can run down like all kinds of stuff. You can tell me what you eat, how you exercise, what you're trying to do, who you're trying to look like, who you're trying to be. But if I ask you, how's your mental health, a lot of people are just like, it's good, it's bad, it's fine. But those aren't words that are going to help advance you. So I came up with this next slide to change how you talk about mental health. What I did up top is I broke mental health challenges into 5 categories. So on the left side are everyday challenges. These are things all of you go through. Everybody in this room experiences those. Next to that are environmental factors. So the home you grew up in, the school you went to, the way you were raised, that affects your mental health. I grew up in a really tough home environment. I grew up in a really tough area where people were just supposed to suck it up, deal with it on their own. That affected me. Next to that are significant events. These are things people go through at different times in their life, but you'll experience them. Next to that are mental health disorders, and next to that are developmental disabilities. I put this up there because a lot of people tell me things like, hey man, I had a bad day, I have clinical depression. And I'm like, no, you just had a bad day. Or somebody might share something like, I have a lot of nervousness, so I have an anxiety disorder. No, you're probably just nervous. So there are differences. But when you talk about your mental health, instead of saying it's good, bad, or fine, the mental health spectrum is on the bottom. Almost everyone's goal is to have a balanced life. Sometimes it's difficult to balance. Sometimes you need help to balance. Sometimes you need constant assistance to balance, and sometimes you're just not able to balance. You're on this spectrum your entire lives. I'm always going to need help to balance my life because I have a mental health issue, right? A disorder. But I could get a phone call right after this presentation that something traumatic happened in my life and be unable to balance. And it could be days, weeks, or months depending on what it is. So the next time somebody asks you about your mental health, think about this spectrum. Where are you on it? It can change every single day, and that's okay. It's not a judgment, it's life. So there are 2 huge issues affecting high school students today that I like to talk about. The first one is a lot of students are having a competition to see who can be more stressed out. So what happens sometimes, this is the way that plays out. One person says to another person, yo, I didn't sleep last night. I have to write a paper, I have a test I have to take, I'm not gonna sleep tonight because my life is stressful. And the next person, instead of being like, yo, that sucks, is like, no, I have 2 tests. I have 3 papers. I have a job, I have to feed my family, I don't know how we're gonna pay the bills. I volunteer in 3 organizations, I play 6 sports and 4 instruments. My life is harder than your life. If you are having a competition to see who can be more stressed out, please know this is a competition that no one actually wins. Because the winner of that competition is the most dysfunctional person you know. Like, you don't win a car, you don't win ice cream, you win by being like, now I can't even play games on my phone. Like, I'm so burned out. It would be much more useful to have a competition to see who can balance their life more than to have a competition of who's better at burning out. And we do this with a lot of things. When you're in high school, you might be like, you might be a really, really fit, good-looking person, but you always think someone else looks better than you. Girls have this competition a lot, guys have it, but then you always have that one dude that's like, nah, I look good. I look great. Look at me today. So I always ask this question in my audiences, when I say the word stress, how many of you in this room think of good stress? How many of you think of bad stress? All right, so I want to explain the difference. Good stress is a motivating factor. It activates your fight or flight mechanism. It helps you focus. It helps you study. It helps you do things. It motivates you. Bad stress does the opposite. It debilitates you. It's headaches. It's insomnia. It's body aches. It's not being able to eat. It's going through all these things. What we've done in our society today is normalized bad stress. We've normalized it almost to the point where when you hear just the word stress, you think about like, oh, this is going to kill me. This is going to hurt me. The difference between good stress and bad stress is different for all of you. I can't give you that. But it's helpful for you, especially now, to start thinking about what stress motivates me, what stress debilitates me. The second biggest issue affecting students today is lack of sleep. So I have a great saying up here: you don't have insomnia, you have a messed up sleeping pattern. I have two pictures of people asleep and then a baby asleep on a pug. Why? Because it's adorable. Before I go into why sleep is important, I want to ask you some quick questions about how much you sleep. I want you to think about how much you sleep on your average school night. I don't want you to think about breaks, because I know when you get a break, a lot of you binge sleep. A lot of you be like, yo, I slept for 16 hours. I woke up once to eat. I went back to sleep. It was amazing. I don't want you to think about that. I want you to think about your average school night. So on your average school night, how many of you would say you sleep 8 hours a night? 7 hours, 6 hours, 5 hours, 4 or less. Okay, so this amazing thing happens. All right, listen up. Listen up, everybody. This amazing thing happens every time I do this in an audience. When I'm at 8 and 7 hours, no one ever looks around the room. When I go to 6 hours and lower, people start looking around the room, and I never know if someone in the audience is only looking around to be like, who sleeps less than me? Because I will out-unsleep. I will stay up the rest of this year. I will beat this person at this not sleeping game. Don't do that. Here's the thing I want you to keep in mind. This is why I ask you about how much you're sleeping. I'm a huge fan of movies and shows where people are captured and interrogated. And in the movies, you are led to believe the #1 way to interrogate someone is to deprive them of sleep, right? But in the movies, you keep that person awake for days or weeks or months at a time. You use strobe lights, you play bad music, you scare them. Neuroscientists have found that that doesn't work. Like, if you keep a human being awake for more than 1 day, they become delusional. Most of you know this, because most of you pulled an all-nighter, and the next day you're like seeing shadows and flashes. You're like, yo, I need to get some sleep. So there's nothing useful about interrogating a delusional person because they make stuff up. So what neuroscientists found is that the most effective way to break a human being down is not to keep them awake. It's to only allow them to sleep for 3 to 5 hours a day. I want to repeat this. The most effective way to break a human being down is to only allow them to sleep for 3 to 5 hours a day. The average student in this country sleeps 4 to 6 hours a day, which is right in line with the harshest interrogation techniques used by militaries around the world. So congratulations. I'm not sure what to tell you about that. I do not bring sleep up because I have all the answers for you. I bring sleep up because when I stood in front of you today and said I was going to talk to you about mental health, a lot of you looked at me and you're like, I'm cool. I don't need this. If you're having a competition to see who's more stressed out, if you're not sleeping, mental health is for you. It's something you do need to focus on. And the biggest reason it's for you is because your brain doesn't fully mature until age 25. Now, I have a picture up here of your brain as a computer. Your brain is the most advanced computer that we have any knowledge of. We can't build a computer that does 1/10 of what your brain does. Now, there is a incorrect statement out there that you only use 10% of your brain. It is completely untrue. Please do not repeat that. Please do not watch that stupid movie. All of you use 100% of your brain. If you didn't, your skull would not be as big as it is. Like, you wouldn't have this big skull and then your brain being like, I'm a ping pong ball in here. I'm cool. I don't need any of this. You use 100% of your brain. The problem is, before age 25, your brain doesn't look like this. It looks more like this. It's trying to figure a lot out. And the part of your brain that's most mature before age 25 is mainly focused on impulse. It's why I raced my minivan when I was in high school. Not only did I drive a minivan, but I thought I could beat like Mustangs and like Camaros and like any car that was even like souped up. I was like, no, yeah, I got a minivan. It's got a passing gear. I got this. I really think that if my brain had like matured a little faster, I wouldn't have thought that. I wouldn't have been in that situation. But also, because your brain matures so much later, a lot of things you do are impulsive. Like, you have a lot of urges and a lot of thoughts. You have a part of your brain that is like, hey, is this a good decision? Like, let's think about this for a minute. And then this other part of your brain is like, no, I need to make out with this person now. I need to do this now. I need to feel these things now. So what's happening in your brain right now is you are forming connections. You are building pathways. You are creating habits. Mental health is not something you do just when something's wrong. It's not something you do just when you have a problem. It is something that you build and you foster and you grow like your physical health. And one of the biggest issues that I face with young people today, I mentioned earlier, is that most people don't know the difference between feeling sad and having clinical depression. So I just want to explain that quickly. When you feel sad or depressed or upset, these are things that have an identifiable cause. So let's say something happens to you. Your parents get divorced, you go through a breakup, you lose someone. You can feel upset or sad, but those things have an identifiable cause. Now, sometimes those things are extreme. Let me give you an example. When I was 13 years old, one of my best friends was killed, and he was killed in front of my best friend. I grew up in a really rural part of Pennsylvania. One night, a neighbor hit a deer, called my friend's dad for help. My friend's dad took my two friends with him. It was really late at night, so my one friend crossed this road. My other friend just kind of froze up, and he was hit by a truck and was killed in front of my friend. Now, my friend who saw this happen grew up in a home where you don't talk about it. You don't cry about it. You suck it up. You deal with it on your own, and if you can't, you must be weak. So that's what he did. At age 13, he never said a word. He never shed a tear. But from that point on, anytime something major happened in his life, he shut down. So his uncle dies. His grandfather dies. He doesn't say anything. But anytime something minor would happen, he would unleash a rage that no one could get in front of, that no one could stop. This was a kid who I watched assault people, get arrested for underage DUI, dealing drugs. This was the kid who would go to parties and brand himself or funnel a bottle of vodka. The thing was, he didn't have depression. He didn't have a mental health disorder. He had a really traumatic experience that he didn't know how to cope with. But he knew what was wrong. When you have depression, you don't have an identifiable cause. Everything sucks, everything hurts, and you don't know why. You lay in bed all day and sleep all day. You stop doing things you enjoy, you stop taking care of yourself, you may have thoughts of death, you may have thoughts of suicide. It lasts for weeks, and you don't know why. The opposite of depression is not happiness. A very famous author says the opposite of depression is vitality. It's having the energy to be alive. So to talk to you a little bit more about depression, I do want to share with you my personal story. I live in Los Angeles now. I didn't grow up in LA. As I mentioned, I grew up in Pennsylvania. But I have a really interesting beginning to my personal story. Growing up in Pennsylvania is not interesting, but what is interesting is that I was actually born in Bethlehem and raised in Nazareth, Pennsylvania. So if you're not familiar with my home state, an hour north of Philadelphia are two towns, Bethlehem and Nazareth. The deal is if you live in Nazareth and you are pregnant, there are no hospitals. If you want to have your child, your only hospital option is to go to Bethlehem, have your child, and then flee back to Nazareth. I'm not sure how my mom got back to Nazareth. I used to do this part of my presentation without Google Maps. Someone would always get offended. They'd come up to me afterwards and be like, hey, that's not a funny joke. You're not mental health Jesus. And I was like, right, I never said that. I never hashtagged that. Like, this is an actual place. Is anyone else in this room know where Bethlehem, Pennsylvania is, or have been born in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania? Anybody? Right here, where? Were you born in Bethlehem? See, it exists. We were born in the same hospital, because there's only one. So this is where my story starts. Keeping it light, I have a really great picture of me from when I was 16. It's real. It happened. Yeah. I know some of you are probably jealous. My brother used to cut my hair, so that's what I was rocking. Last week, I put this picture up, and a very nice young lady whistled, and I was like, oh, he was single at the time of that photo. He was not dating anyone. I put that picture up there for perspective. Obviously, what I was going through wasn't funny. And what happened to me when I was 16 was I just started experiencing kind of classic symptoms of bipolar disorder. So the way that starts is I wouldn't sleep for 4 or 5 days in a row, but I wasn't tired. A lot of you don't sleep, and a lot of you are tired because I see it in your face right now. What would happen to me is I would lay down to go to sleep, and I would think like 8 to 9 thoughts a minute. My mind was racing and racing and racing, and I couldn't sleep. As I mentioned earlier, after you don't sleep for a day, you become delusional. mania and a manic high is just illusion. I felt like I was on top of the world, nothing could stop me, I was invincible. And then my moods would change, and I couldn't get out of bed. And then my moods would change. I'd get really angry, really violent, fight people, kick things, punch things. Because my mind was going through so much, I just wanted to shut it down. Well, the quickest way for me to shut my mind down was to drink. But I didn't drink to hang out with people. I drank to shut my mind down. I actually started drinking regularly when I was 13 after my friend was killed, because I didn't know how to talk about it. By 16, I wasn't just drinking to shut down. I was drinking all the way. Like, I'd drink a case of beer and pass out. Drink a bottle of vodka, drink a bottle of rum, and pass out. I didn't know what to do. So when I was in high school, we had talks like this. Some dude would always come in and be like, hey, everybody, don't drink alcohol. It's bad for you. Okay, cool. I knew that. No one ever came into my school and said, don't drink alcohol because you hate yourself. Don't drink alcohol because you don't know how to deal with what you're going through. Don't drink alcohol as your only coping mechanism. Luckily, my middle brother noticed everything I was going through. He told a friend of the family. A friend of the family took me for a walk. He was like, I think you need to seek help. So at 16, I went to see a psychiatrist. I sat down, answered all of his questions, and at the end of it, he said to me, okay, you have bipolar disorder. Now, in my 16-year-old brain, I thought, cool, it's got a name, you'll give me some stuff, and I'll just move on with my life. Two very dangerous things happened before I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. The first one was, I was really good at hiding my emotions and making other people laugh. The second thing was, I learned to binge drink before I learned to talk about my feelings. So after the diagnosis, while everyone was telling me to do something different, I kept hiding and I kept binge drinking. And when I went into my senior year of high school, I went into a really deep state of depression. But depression doesn't just like happen one day. Like, you don't just wake up and all of a sudden, boom, depression. It starts slowly. So like when I went into September of my senior year, I started feeling really lonely. I felt like there was no one to talk to, no one would understand me. But even if there was someone to talk to, I thought I should suck it up. I was like, so what? You're lonely. One day you'll wake up, you won't be lonely anymore. But that loneliness didn't go away. And in November of my senior year, I started having thoughts of death, thoughts of suicide. And that built to the point where I was thinking about suicide and death 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But again, I didn't talk about it. For 2 months of my senior year, anytime I was alone, I was crying. But anytime I was in front of people, I put on my happy face. I made everyone laugh. I made everyone smile. And then I went home and I either cried myself to sleep or I didn't sleep at all. I honestly believed like, yo, one day I'll wake up and I'll just want to live again. I don't need to say anything. That day didn't come. On January 5th of my senior year, I was hospitalized for attempting to take my own life. But nothing happened that day. I went to school like I always did. Played in a basketball game, won the game, went to a restaurant with my friends to celebrate like we always did. And on the way home from that restaurant, I decided I no longer wanted to live. Now what's scary about that is I didn't want to die. So people always ask me, why'd you try and kill yourself if you didn't want to die? I didn't want to die. I just couldn't handle living the way I was living anymore. And taking my own life was a way out of that pain. I thought everyone would be better off and I wouldn't have these thoughts anymore. So I came home from that restaurant. I was rushed to the hospital. I attempted to take my own life. And when I got to the hospital, they gave me a tranquilizer. So I woke up like 24 hours later with no drawstrings in my sweatshirt, no shoelaces in my shoes, no sheets on my bed, someone watching me 24 hours a day. And I was scared. You know, I was 17. I never imagined being in a psychiatric ward. So a couple days later, we had group therapy, and everyone had to stand up and talk about why they were there. And the stories before mine were filled with really traumatic things. And then they came to me, and they asked me, well, why are you here? And I didn't know what to say. And they said, all right, if you don't know why you're here, can you tell us about your life? And I was like, yeah, I can do that. My name's Ross. I was president of my class. I played varsity basketball for 3 years. I was a member of SAD and peer helper. I volunteered 5 years for the Special Olympics. I attended the National Youth Leadership Forum. I have a 3.8 GPA, and I stopped. And I felt really stupid, because the life I was describing was my external life. It was my college resume, but it wasn't the life I lived. If I want to talk about the life that I lived, I should have stood up and said, hi, my name's Ross, and I hate myself. I hate myself so much, I'm willing to binge drink and drive. I don't think anyone should care about me. I didn't say that. And the point of this part of my story is not about me. It's about all of you. Because how many people do you know with an external life that everybody sees and an internal life that's completely different? A lot of us do that. A lot of us hide. A lot of us push things down. And that's okay. I'm not saying you have to stand up in front of your school and tell everybody. But you have to have an outlet for that internal life. Because if you don't, it explodes. I was in that hospital for a while. When I got out, I went back to school, and all of a sudden everything was different. Because before I went to that hospital, I was a cool guy. I was a guy everyone talked to, everyone liked, everyone knew. When I got out of the hospital, all of a sudden I was just a psycho. I was a crazy kid. I lost friends. I had rumors about me in the school. I had rumors about me all throughout that small town. And so 2 months later, after I got out of the hospital, a psychologist came into one of my classrooms to talk about the patients he treated. As he talked about the patients he treated, every single student in that classroom started laughing. But I wasn't laughing. Like at that point, I'd been laughed at too much. And so I grabbed my teacher and I took him to the hallway and I was like, this isn't funny to me. And he looked down at me in the most rural Pennsylvania way and he asked me, what are you going to do about it? And I said, let me speak. Let me tell people what it's like to actually go through this. He said I could speak. So 2 weeks later, I stood up in the exact same classroom and I spoke for the very first time. And it did not go nearly as smoothly as this is. I stood behind a podium, shaking, sweating through my clothes. I didn't know what was going to happen. But when I finished my presentation, nobody laughed. More importantly, people came up to me and shared their stories. And I learned at a young age that if you share your story, it helps other people to share theirs. So in April of that year, all my college acceptance letters came in, and I just wanted to get out of Nazareth, Pennsylvania more than anything in the world. I was like, I have to get out of here. I have to go somewhere else. So I went to American University in Washington, D.C. And in my freshman year at American University, I was thinking to myself, like, I have to change something. I have to do something differently. Maybe I should talk about how I feel. But I didn't know how to do that. So I went out to lunch with 4 guys that I had known for like 5 days. So I didn't really know them. Like 5 days, you don't know people. And we sit down at the lunch table. And I turn to them and I say, yeah, so I have bipolar disorder with anger control problems and psychotic features. I just tried to kill myself like 8 months ago. And it was really awkward, right? So like one guy looks at me and he's like, oh, so do you need a shot or a beer? And another guy looked at me and was like, no, guys, he just needs to hook up with somebody. Who do you want to hook up with? We'll take care of this right now. What was happening was a really male conversation about emotions and feelings and how to fix those things. And it came down to drinking or hooking up. And I don't know if that was effective. A lot of people say no one knew what to do for me. That was not the issue. The issue was I didn't know what to do for myself. And when I didn't know what to do, what did I turn to? Alcohol. 3 weeks into my freshman year, I had my stomach pumped from alcohol poisoning. 2 months into my freshman year, I had such a severe relapse, I had to go home. Here's the thing. If you're ever diagnosed with any kind of mental health issue, you need to have a plan when you go to college. You need to know how to take care of yourself like you would your physical health. I didn't. I went home. I was hospitalized again, got out of the hospital. Took a year off from school, went to a local college in my house for 3 semesters, took another year off. And then eventually I had this idea that if I went back to American University, all my problems would go away. So I went back to American University 4 years after I started, and I changed nothing internally. I was drinking more than I was at 22 than I was at 18. In my first semester back in American, one night I drank so much I passed out for 22 hours. This was not uncommon for me. I used to binge drink so much that I'd pass out for 12 hours, 10 hours, 8 hours, 22 hours was the longest. And I woke up that night and looked in the mirror and I started crying. And it was that night at 22 was the first time that I ever accepted having any problems in my life, which is really scary. My friend was killed when I was 13. I was diagnosed at 16. I was hospitalized at 17, 18, and 19. And it wasn't until I was 22 that I was like, yo, this is real. Now, acceptance is a really important piece of this, but I hated myself. I hated myself more than I think anyone in this room could possibly imagine. And when you hate yourself, it does not matter what your diagnosis or your treatment are, because I didn't even care enough about myself to want to try. I think there are few things more dangerous than a human being who hates him or herself, because when I hated myself, I had no consequences. I drove drunk. I did a lot of drugs. I had a lot of unprotected sex. I didn't care what happened to me. The first thing I had to learn to do was like myself. So a lot of times when you see your friends struggling, when you see your friends doing really dangerous stuff, It might not be because they like getting high or stoned or drunk. It might be because they don't like themselves. It was a long journey to learn how to like myself. Once I learned to like myself, I still had to deal with bipolar disorder and anger and substance abuse. To do that, I had to get treatment. I needed a starting point. I needed a balancing point to help me learn what to do. But the biggest thing I learned in my recovery is that I didn't choose to have bipolar disorder, but I could choose to change the way I coped with it. I could stop hiding. I could stop drinking. I could start addressing it. I could start finding that strength. I still have to work on my mental health every single day. I still have to take care of my mental health every single day, and that's okay. Most of us should. But the thing that unifies all of us in this room is that none of you will ever choose to go through anything difficult. You're never going to choose to have someone die, to go through breakups, to go through rejection, to go through pain, but you can choose how you cope with it. So I always like to take the last 5 minutes to talk about coping mechanisms. You cope every single day. You cope with your friends, your family, school. You cope with sports. You cope with all kinds of stuff in your life. The concept I want to introduce you to is that this is a synapse in your brain. The more often a synapse sends messages, the more automatic those actions become. So if you look at the world's top athletes, these are people who have practiced the sport over and over and over again to the point where they don't have to think about it, they're just reacting. This thought never goes through Serena Williams' brain. There is a ball coming, I must move my arm back and hit the ball. She doesn't have time for that. It's a reaction, it's quick. The world's best athletes have to develop habits that they react so quickly, they're doing it before anyone else can do it. That's how you're good. You do this in other areas of your life. Does anybody in this room play an instrument? A lot of people play instruments. I'm going to go with somebody close. What instrument do you play? Yes. Piano? How long have you played? Since you were 5 years old? How long did you have to play the piano before you were like, I want to play the piano in front of everybody? Couple years? Okay. Anybody else play an instrument? Over here? Yeah, what do you play?
I play piano and trombone.
Piano and trombone? How long have you played? Both.
I played piano for 10 years and trombone for about 6.
And how long did you have to play them before you were like, I want to play this in front of everybody?
Like
5 or 4 years? Yeah, okay. Is anybody in this room good at video games? All right, let's go in the back row. I need to know what your best video game is. Like, what can you go online and beat everybody?
Y'all can all catch it in 2K.
Okay. All right. All right, that's fair. Now, now you have to be honest with me though. How long did it take you to get good at those games before you could like go on and school everybody? 2 years. That's an honest answer. Because some dudes will be like, I was just good from the start. Like, I think I was playing in the womb. So like when I was born, I was just like beating everybody. 2 years is a really good answer. Who is the best athlete in this room? I'm gonna take this young lady. What is your sport? Basketball. And how long did it take you to get good at basketball? 4 years, you say? Okay. So what is happening when you're getting good at instruments, at video games, at sports? You're creating these pathways. And as any good athlete or gamer or musician knows, the longer you practice, the easier it gets. When you're playing an instrument, you don't want to be caught up in where do I put my hands next, you want to do it. When you're playing video games, you don't want to think about what's next, you want to do it. When you're playing basketball, you want to be ahead of them so that you can beat them. The longer you do something, the better you get at it. Well, guess what, guys? I started binge drinking when I was 16. And I binge drank for every emotional trigger I had until I was 22. The longer you use a coping mechanism, the more automatic it becomes, the harder it is to change it. So some of you might think like, oh, what I'm doing right now to cope is fine. I'll change it. You could, but it's going to take you time to do it. It still takes me a long time to change how I cope. When I go through stuff, my first thought is, don't say anything. I still have to work hard to change that. So I asked 500 students, what are your top 5 coping mechanisms? They told me eating, drinking alcohol, exercise, talking to a friend, and not sleeping. Number 6 was hooking up. People have tweeted me really interesting stuff. Somebody once tweeted me, I eat Nutella. And I was like, oh, cool. Do you like put that on bread? And they're like, no, I just eat jars. Straight jars of Nutella. That's an expensive coping mechanism, by the way. So what I want to do right now is take you through a quick montage of how early coping begins and where it goes in your life, because coping starts this early. When you're crying because you want to be fed, held, or changed, you're coping. Some people suck their thumbs. Some people have blankets. Does anyone in this room know someone who still has a blanket from when they were a baby that they use to comfort themselves? I don't need to know who they are. I'm not going to look. Here's what I want to say to you. Listen. Think about how deep, all right, listen up. Think about how deep those pathways in your brain are, that as a teenager, you still find comfort in holding something you held as a baby. Some other coping mechanisms are stuffed animals. At a certain age, your emotions started coming out. I hope this girl got what she wanted, because she's real mad about it. When your emotions start coming out, listen up, the first thing people try to do is distract you. So they put you in front of screens. What you have to think about is which of your coping skills are effective. They build you, your physical health, your mental health, your relationships. Which of your coping skills are ineffective? They take away from you your physical health, your mental health, your relationships. Some of you watch TV for an hour and two to zone out. Other of you may watch a Love and Hip Hop or Kardashians marathon, or you might Netflix binge for a 4-day weekend and then resurface. What works for you, what doesn't? Some other coping skills that develop at a young age: eating, shopping, video games, listening to music. I could do a separate presentation on music and the brain. I won't. Here's what I will say. Humans have been using music to express emotions for thousands of years. We've been using words to express emotions in a clinical setting for like 100. If you suck at talking about how you feel, use music. A lot of you have a go-to song when you're happy, when you want to party, when you want to chill, when you're angry, when you're sad and you want to listen to Adele. Use it. It helps get your emotions out. Some other coping skills that develop are sports or writing or arts or reading. But by the time you become a teenager, people start doing other things. Some people drink. Some people use drugs. Some people just isolate themselves. We all know someone who, when they're going through something, they just ghost. They're just gone. You can't find them. And this person's not taking medication for a problem they have. They're raiding a medicine cabinet. The #1 leading cause of drug deaths in this country is prescription drug abuse. Some people think it's okay to take my pills and my friend's pills and drink. It has consequences. But what I want to remind you of is this is the time period where you are building your coping skills. Like what you do right now. If you isolate yourself, if you shut down, if you drink, if you do drugs, it matters. It's what you continue. It's what you practice. So if you want to change your coping skills, there are steps. The first step is you have to want to do it. Nobody can do it for you. The second step is you have to be able to identify it as it's happening. So I could say, yo, I want to stop drinking. What I had to learn was this is when I binge drink because something's happening in my life. I had to see it. The third step is you have to replace it with a different coping skill. And then the fourth step is you have to practice it and practice it and practice it until you become like the Serena Williams of coping, where you're so good at it, you're not thinking about it. And the most important piece of that is the environment that you're in. I had friends who thought it was cool I passed out for 14 hours a night. That wasn't cool. I wasn't going to change with them as my friends. So the last thing I want to say to you today is this. I stressed throughout this presentation that you are building your brains right now. And you will continue to build your brain no matter what age you are throughout the rest of your life. And I want to share one more part of my story about why that's important. When I turned 21 years old, my parents took me out for a birthday dinner, pretty standard birthday dinner. We go out to a steakhouse, we sit down, we order appetizers, waiter walks away, and then both my parents started crying. Not standard. I had actually not seen my dad cry before in my life, so he's crying at my birthday dinner. I'm confused. And I asked my parents, why are you crying? And my dad said to me through those like choked up, kind of like breathless, bawling tears, we didn't think you would live to be 21. I gave my parents a lot of reasons to not think I would live to be 21, but I did. I can't tell you how many hands I have held, how many people I have hugged, how many tears I have seen from family and friends who have had someone not make it to 21. All of you in this room, you have one life. You have one chance. And almost all of us in this room spend our day going through some checklist of things we have to do to get to our one place of comfort, to get to our one place of peace. And that place could be a person. That could be a song. That could be your phone. That could be a game. That could be anything. The next time you are in your place of comfort, you are in your place of peace, please take some time to think about your internal life. Think about the things you're hiding. And think about the ways you can express it. Because it does take more strength to talk about these issues than it does to hide them. It does take more strength to uncover these things than it does to bury them. All of you in this room have the power to change your mental health. It's time for you to embrace that power. So this morning, I shared with you my personal story. I hope that at some point in your life, when it really matters, when you really need to the most, you'll share your story. Thank you very much.